Welcome to episode 113 of Nobody Special.
In this episode, we talk about anxiety and identity.
The Gospel Outpost presents Nobody Special. Hey everyone, welcome to Nobody Special, two nobodies talking about the somebody who matters. I'm Danny, the host, and Nervous Nancy of Nobody Special.
And I'm Caleb, your other host of Nobody Special. This is a podcast where two generations of people talk about God, pop culture, politics, and everything in between, all while not taking any of it too seriously. I'm forgetting what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I made it through that.
Kind of.
And now it started.
Caleb, hi, first of all. Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, this whole thing. All right. Again, we're not talking about the pandemic. I do want to say...
You just brought it up.
I know.
How dare you?
I know. I want to say that I do think there is a spiritual warfare aspect of this because I was watching the normal things I watch on YouTube. So, which, by the way, YouTube doesn't think I'm a real person at all because they're not sure what to give me anymore. It's Let's Plays of gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Ross painting,
Mm-hmm.
and college theology lectures.
Yeah.
And so YouTube on the, like things I think you might enjoy, it just goes like, I don't know, dude. You're on your own. Good luck out there.
Yeah.
So
I'm kind of the same way. Mine is like filmmaking,
Mm-hmm.
ASMR. I'm just going to say it. All right, guys. Cat's out of the bag.
I actually said Bob Ross painting because I didn't want to say ASMR.
And then also,
That's going
what
to
else
be
is there? I
the
don't know.
weirdest thing to explain. If I get married one day, I think I'm just going to have to quit cold turkey on that. I'm just going to be honest. It's like, so this person, yes. They whisper to you, yes. And it helps you sleep? Yeah, kind of. Why?
I think
I
the
don't know.
dynamic is going to be different. The going
Is
to
it-
bed dynamic. Like, I wouldn't watch it unless I'm alone, which sounds really bad.
Yeah, man.
Sounds terrible.
Right.
But, like, I can go to sleep without it, but it's just nice to, like, relax yourself beforehand. Or even in the morning. I'll watch it in the morning sometimes. It's just like a nice gradual way to wake up. I probably should read the Bible.
I can't do
like
it in the morning.
Good people
Can't.
do.
But to think about this as a concept, we weren't going to talk about this, but now
Yeah.
we're in it. To think about this as a concept, if anyone ever did any of this stuff in actuality,
It would be weird.
they would be out their dang mind. It's like, hey, Caleb, I got this cup of coffee for you.
You're not good at it. You gotta...
Like, what a weird...
Wait, stop talking. We gotta give you guys ASMR, all right? Listen real tight.
We have to give you guys ASMR. Sounds horrible. It's just the wrong cup, and we don't have nails. And there's so much wrong with
You're
this.
talking so they can't hear it, Danny.
I'm doing them a favor.
All right.
So anyway,
You got your taste.
Yeah. So
Forget we ever talked about that. Don't bring it up to anyone you know.
We don't know what it is. Anyway, I do think for this whole pandemic thing, there is a bit of a spiritual battle going on in all this because I don't watch scary, stabby movies or any of that, but I've gotten 4 days straight of just ads. First it was Quibi, and I saw a few people, they commented, Quibi sucks. Like, some people got it, they're
Really?
like, it's bad. But now I'm getting a whole bunch of ads for a thing called Shudder. It's a subscription service. And bless you.
Thank you.
That's a proper COVID sneeze. Just dab into the sneeze. Good job.
Towards you,
The only
too.
thing I would complain about is that you are indeed aiming at me, and that is bad. But anyway, this thing, it's a subscription service for the horror, the thriller, and the suspense. And I don't watch those ever.
Right.
And it's like, you're in an algorithm. I'm like, this has got to be some kind of spiritual battle going on, because it's like, half the movies I got, it was like, a vampire and a demon are fighting for the souls
Do you not
of
like
New
scary
York.
movies?
I just don't watch them. They're not my thing.
Yeah. I don't watch them alone, but it's always anytime you have a group movie night.
Mm-hmm.
It's always fun to watch horror movies. I don't know what it is.
I think they're all right. So, I think most of them are just cheap. Do you know what I mean?
I don't watch those.
They
have to be good for me.
Well, yeah, and there aren't a ton that are good because it's easy to scare a person just by showing them something disturbing and jump scares.
Yeah.
The things I actually enjoy are things people put a lot of thought into in order to craft a story that is intense, but that's not this service. It's just, I did a super cocaine to paint, and now I see demons. It's like, that's not, like...
I see dead people.
That movie's been made 1,000 times, and it's just jump scares. So I don't know. There's definitely a spiritual component going on.
I'm gonna have to cross that script off my list. Thanks for crushing my dreams,
cocaine
Danny.
Demons. Like, yeah,
It is kind of weird because I've been having tons of nightmares recently.
Yeah, man.
It's been weird, like demonic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I will have like periods where I go through it and I'll like lose sleep and it like is bad.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, yeah, it's coming back. It's making a comeback. The weirdest thing, I had a dream that I was, like, fighting this demon. And then I woke up from that scary dream, and I told my mom about it. And then I realized that I don't live with my mom anymore. And then I woke up from that dream. And
told your mom in person that.
Yeah.
A dreamception?
Yeah, it was dreamception. It's pretty crazy.
I guess it's just called Inception. That is the whole point of that movie. Sorry.
Inception, yeah.
Inception? A dream in a dream. See, all right.
That was the first time that's ever happened to me. It's weird.
Okay, I'm not trying to make fun of that thing at all.
Mm-hmm. But you're definitely
well, it's just a hard pivot, and I'm sorry for this. And that's a real serious thing. We'll be sure and pray over you before you go home. I once fell asleep watching Inception, and I have this low-key fear in the back of my head that none of this is real. And I'm going to be honest, the way it's going...
He figured it out.
Kind of makes sense. Like, you know, like I think the Air Force put out the videos of the UFOs, and like no one cared.
Yeah,
that's really terrifying. It's like, yeah, whatever. Whatever. Okay, sure. Welcome to May, I
guess.
Yeah. Will Smith, if you're out there, July 4th is coming up. Bill Paxton, and we're gonna need that Independence Day speech again, please. All about it. But I know that stuff, and all this situation, can be kind of scary and make a few people kind of anxious.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it would be good.
You know what, real quick, I don't want to cut you off. Before we get into this next topic, we need to talk about aliens at some point. That's one of the biggest questions I always have about Christianity is like, aliens, if they are real, what does it mean? And now these UFO things, it's a cool topic.
We can't.
Yes.
We can't.
Why?
No, because that... We're still in the banter phase, I can say this. The worst sermon I've ever heard of all time was a pastor exploring that question for what it would mean if there were extraterrestrials and what it would mean to our theology and would it even change. Because he took the passage, and I wish any of this is a joke because this is not how you interpret Scripture, and this sermon was the worst thing ever, and I call it Spaceman Sunday. Because he was out of his dang mind to preach it, but he took the passage where God told Abraham to count the stars, and stopped and went, well, there's got to be life on one of those, and then explored what that meant for a 35-minute sermon.
Dang. Spaceman Charles.
So at the end of it, I think I was over displaying some emotions. Because the final thing that he said is, now I know some of you are out there thinking, why does this even matter? And when I say he looked right at me, it was a small church.
You were there in person.
Yeah.
Oh, that changes the whole dynamic of the story.
And I think please tune into the YouTube for this because it's a sight gag. I think I spent the entire sermon doing this.
Yeah.
Why? And I think he saw that because he ended up by going, and I know some of you out there are thinking, why does this even matter? And when I say he made eye contact, there's a trick that pastors do that they pretend to make eye contact. I'm just throwing the trade secrets out. You pretend to make eye contact, but it's this way of staring at a group that it appears that you're making eye contact with everyone. He did not do that. He made direct eye contact with me to the point that 3 people after the service said, was he looking at you? And I went, yeah. Because I was asking that question, maybe out loud. I might have muttered it. I'm not sure.
That's funny.
But it
will
go in the idea toilet.
Good.
But we're also putting dinosaurs in there.
Okay. I like that.
This is going to be either our best or least viewed episode is the aliens and dinosaurs.
But getting on to what we are talking about today, like you said, we have been experiencing a time of anxiety and stress.
We already killed the segue. We're talking about anxiety.
Yes. Danny's like the type of kid that if he can't play with his ball, then no one else gets to.
No, that was a great segue and you murdered it. Caleb, go ahead. That was a good point that you were making. All of us have been experiencing some kind of tension over this, I'd say.
Right.
Spiritual battle. A lot of anxieties going around. Pressure to open. Pressure to stay closed. People are nervous in a lot of different directions. Caleb, is that a thing that you've noticed going around at all?
Yeah, I would say like even for me, it's the quarantine is finally getting to me, and it's like I don't know if I've noticed it any more or less than everybody else, but I think it's definitely still a fresh topic. I mean, even when stuff isn't crazy, it's still a big thing. So I think it'll be super good to talk about.
Yeah. The thing I've noticed is that part of it is the lack of contact to other people. I mean, the studies are you kind of need 8 kinds of contact a day in order to just stay emotionally or quasi healthy. I think it's 8, and if you're quarantined at home, you're not getting it. And then even going out, there's a thing kind of disturbing about people are wearing a mask and scared to give each other a handshake. I actually saw a guy in Publix the other day. He extended a hand for a handshake, and the guy kind of went like,
that's understandable.
That's a hard no on that one.
Yeah,
and
I wouldn't do a handshake.
It was the only time I've seen a man decline a handshake. I'm like, he ignored all social norms and went no to the handshake. Teach me, for one. Like, teach me how to... Hey, buddy, put her there. Like, no. Like,
it is always awkward, because anytime I walk up to, like, greet somebody now, whether it's at work or just in general, like, there's always that moment where you're just like... You gotta find out if they're gonna try and do the handshake thing.
Right.
And it's always awkward, like, it's just like...
Sure.
I say,
and people are
go
saying,
for
like,
the
tap
elbow.
shoes or elbows. I'm like, no, those are just weird.
I do the elbow thing occasionally.
I guess, but I don't know. The other thing I've noticed is that a ton of people are all saying the same thing. Everybody else seems on edge. And I want to just talk about that sentence for a minute. If everybody is saying everybody else seems on edge, then I would say it's probable that all of us are on edge, including ourselves. And it's kind of difficult to pinpoint that just because everybody is tense and everybody is snapping more. They're more prone to get angry quicker. Just all these kinds of things that are during a normal time a minor nuisance then become a bigger deal because there's this kind of a background, anxious thought pattern behind it. And I mean, just going through the news, the kinds of things people are scared about is that that this thing isn't over and it's going to kill millions of people, or B, millions of people are going to die because the economy is closed and all of us are going to go hungry. I mean, I saw an article today talking about this thing's going to come back in the fall, and then there's going to be a a kind of a shortage, and then people are going to go hungry. Now, to be clear, for the thing we're talking about today, we're not talking about our COVID-19 theories, because my degree is in theology, and I don't know. Like,
my degree is in
hard knocks.
Nothing.
Yeah, he has film experience, so we don't know. Pay attention to doctors and get multiple perspectives from doctors, economists, and everything else, and balance the thoughts, but also be gentle, because everyone is anxious.
Yeah, and I think that it's an important time to rely on God, and I feel like this is the time where we're truly testing ourselves, you know, on how much we actually trust God.
Right.
And I think that, you know, if we're all honest with ourselves, we're probably not doing great. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are doing great,
right.
but just being honest, you know, it's been kind of hard, but not hard in a sense that, like, I'm having a tough time with anxiety and stuff, but like, just kind of forgetting God's there sometimes,
right?
And just like,
right,
you know, doing your own thing, and so I've been trying to combat that, and I think, yeah, it's definitely been tough, but yeah, how have you been feeling? Yeah,
for, you know, as I started, the stretch of time between this is increasing, and I can't decide if this is a good or bad thing. I would just periodic kind of, I wasn't sleeping great. I was having nightmares. I talked to a few people. This is back in March. They all said, like, yeah, no, we're doing that too. We're not sleeping great and having nightmares, because that was during that time that everybody thought, like, I don't think I can get through this. It can't go more than 14 days. Like,
how many
clearly
months
after
are we
2
in
weeks,
now?
yeah, I don't know if I can go 2 weeks, and like, you know, but and then I'd get these periods of just, like, I don't know how else to say it, but just dread, but in an existential kind of a context of, you know, I was making dinner, and I just stopped and went, oh my gosh, there's a virus trying to kill us all outside, and that was like 2 minutes. Just like, it came from nothing. I was watching Disney Plus cooking dinner, and I just went, there, it's trying to kill us all. Okay, we're good. We're fine, though. We're good. And the stretch between those is getting bigger. I think that's probably a good thing. But, yeah, no, there has been a bit of that going on, just because everything else is going, where a lot of stuff is changing, and now everyone needs to figure out the change in a new context of a post-COVID-19 world, or a post-during COVID-19 world. Yeah. And that's producing a lot of anxiety in people, and I think many people are going through the thing I call the toilet spiral of thought. Yeah. I don't know if I've talked about the toilet spiral of thought, have I?
I don't think so.
You kind of like start and you just go round and round and round, but a little bit further down each time, and it's just a toilet spiral because it doesn't actually go anywhere or do anything. It just spins and spins and spins, and then it's just like, the whole time. And I think as the Bible's talking about being anxious, that's the kind of thing it's talking about. I don't think it's talking about, I have a disorder that is treatable, or a chemical imbalance, or that kind of thing. I'm not trying to call out people, because I hate that. You know, like, I've struggled through blank. Oh, just don't. Okay, thank you. You're great.
Yeah, very good. Yes, perfect. Helpful.
I have a chemical imbalance, so like I don't know how to do that. I don't think that's the thing the Bible's talking about, although there are patterns of thought that can be adjusted through that, but
right.
I mean, the biggest part of anxious thought comes out of Matthew chapter 6, 25 through 34. It's big. We don't have to read the whole thing, but the final verse 34 is, therefore don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself, and each day it has enough troubles on its own.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the core, kind of a foundation of Jesus' instruction on anxious thought is take care of today, the things that you have to take care of today, and don't go into that spiraling thought of, if I don't do this, then this, if I don't do this, then this, if I don't do this, then this, and then this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. Take care of today, because there's so many things going on, and tomorrow's going to have its own problems, but take care of today, and trust that God's going to take care of everything else. I mean,
right. I think that, like, what helps me is, and what I think honestly is the core of what's going on inside of me, and I think for a lot of other Christians, is that during times like this, you know, we always hear the vertical and the horizontal planes in Christianity, that if I'm not looking up at God, if I'm not focusing on God, I'm looking somewhere else.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing with Peter walking on water, and, you know, when he looks at the circumstances around him, he starts to sink.
Right.
And I think that is, it sounds weird, and it sounds very, like, odd, but, like, that's never happened to me before until, like, now. Yeah. And I've been very blessed throughout my whole life that, like, I really have never struggled with depression or anxiety a whole lot at all. And so, like, right now, it's really been happening really for the first time ever. And I called my sister the other day, and I was telling her that. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. The world is dead.
It's just adulthood. Yeah. This is how we exist. Yeah.
But, like, and I think what it is I find myself losing what God's vision for my life is, and what God's vision for the world is, and what his hope is here to do. And I find that is really the core of everything. And I, you know, kind of coming off of your verse, at students, I serve in students at the church I go to, and we were talking about, you know, how God is sovereign. And I think that is a huge thing in all of this. It's a huge
part of anxiety.
So
is control. I'm sorry, can I jump in for a second?
Jump in.
I mean, because that's kind of the thing that is being talked about in there as Jesus is talking through the Sermon on the Mount. He's actually talking about you are functionally you have no power to impact anything. Yeah. And if that gives any kind of anxious thought, then you're concentrating on the wrong thing, because I mean, he talks about, I can't add an hour of my day on the time that God ordains I die. Guess what? That's the time I'm gonna die, period. Yeah. If it's going to be hunger, it's going to be hunger. If it's going to be stabbed, it's going to be stabbed. But God, it's already done in God's book, and I can't change that. Yeah. Because God is sovereign. And if I don't come at that on a sense of being free, and instead am scared of that, then I haven't gotten it correct. Because if God's in control, and I'm trusting in God, and God is all-powerful, then the anxious thought and toil or spiraling thought doesn't have any effect on anything.
Right. Yeah. And I think I want to read this verse that we were talking about the other night, just because it was so good, and I think that it plays perfectly into this. And it's Psalm 62, 5-8. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, I shall not be shaken. On God rests my salvation and my glory, My mighty rock, my refuge is God. Trust in him at all times. O people, pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. And I think that's really, I mean, like what you're just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's super
Right.
important, and I think that it just kind of shows us how dumb we are.
Right.
Like
our need for control.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and not even that,
And we're
but
dumb,
like,
I'll give you that.
Yeah, we are dumb.
We're dumb.
Like I think about, us being like sheep, basically, in the sense that we know, and I know for a lot of us, we've seen God move in our lives, and we know for a fact, like I know for a fact that he is sovereign.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I know that, and I can trust in it at some parts, and then,
Right.
just like flipping a switch, it just
Right.
nada,
Right.
goes away. I think that
Right.
shows how dumb we are, just
Right.
because the moment we lose sight, we just start to sink, just like Peter. And
Or get angry and do the thing Job did.
yeah.
God, I have questions for you. Okay, go ahead. I'll let you. I'm going to give you 38 chapters to get those questions out, and then I'm going to give you a spiritual grand tour and ask, where were you? Like,
Yeah.
if God can do all the things God can do and I'm trusting in him, then being out of control is actually a good thing. I know things I've been in control of. It's not good.
Yeah.
Like, if God is working through me, it's much better. But if I'm trying to be in control of it, then I am going to be anxious because I'm in control of it, and I'm like, this is if I'm ever in a plane and they have to call me up to get the plane down, that's the time we should be anxious. And that's kind of how it goes for everything else, is like, if we're doing that, it's us trying to land the plane. It's not Jesus is my co-pilot. I'm blessed to be in coach. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm blessed to even be in the baggage claim of the plane. It's Jesus's plane. The Holy Spirit's on board, and I get to maybe be there. Do you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, man, Job. I just know that he did 10 times better than I would ever do in those circumstances. Man. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, it's crazy important, and I really do think that that's what a lot of people are feeling now, and it's not even like I focus on coronavirus that much.
Right.
I don't even know what it is, or maybe it's just like the time I'm personally in, outside of all this coronavirus stuff. But I think that that's really what it is just losing sight of what God has in store for us.
It's just a fair amount of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean, we've even brought it up on this podcast before. Like everything is changing and everything is the same, and that's emotionally and psychologically. That's hard.
Right.
I say everything is changing and nothing has changed at all, and I'm tired and I need to sleep until 9 now, and no one's really sure why, but it's that kind of a mentality. But I mean, the things I've as I was thinking about this, I noticed there's 2 things that tomorrow brings from a biblical perspective. The first is troubles. Each day has enough troubles of its own, going back to Matthew chapter 6, but also mercies. In Lamentations 3:22 through 24, it tells us that the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases, and his mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness.
Yeah.
The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. And I think that's the idea, is that tomorrow is going to have enough of its troubles. They're going to be present. It is a biblical promise. Tomorrow has troubles, and God's mercy is new every morning. And then getting up is an exercise in trusting God and saying, I have God. I have all that I need. Therefore, there isn't anything this world can do to me that I need to be anxious about.
Yeah.
And I think to combat that, instead of just going like, just don't, is when those thoughts start to well up. I found it's smart, because I get those a ton of. It's smart to just like stop, take a moment, take a few deep breaths, say a quick prayer, and just kind of restructure the thought process to be more focused on God, and say like, okay, I'm nervous and anxious here, and I'm taking a moment to say, hey God, I need you because I cannot handle this.
Right. Yeah, and I think that knowing what God has in store for us, know that we don't have to, like that verse says, we don't have to worry about tomorrow. Like, focus on
tomorrow will worry
what's
about
right
itself.
in front of you.
Yeah.
And know that, like, even if you somehow die tomorrow, like, knowing that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because you're in God's hands.
Right.
That sounds really morbid. But, like, it's just true.
Right.
No matter when or what happens, it can seem like everything, as far as worldly standards, is going downhill. But, knowing that God has a plan for you, and that this might be it, then, I think I find comfort in that. Like, no matter what it is. If I lose my job, if I'm living on the streets, sitting in a box, like... I
mean, that's not going to happen, but I get what you're saying, but, like, we'd be a pretty crummy church if that, like, oh, brothers, live in a box. I'll pray for you! Like,
right,
you know, like...
That's another good point. Like, God has intentionally placed people in all of our lives.
Right.
That, will take care of us.
Right.
But, like, that's obviously an over-exaggeration about what would happen.
Sorry.
But,
tangent.
It's just true. And I think that staying in community, and I know I hate it so much, but Zoom, it stinks. It's the worst thing ever. But I do find...
Caleb feels, in case Zoom is watching for legal purposes, in his opinion, in mine too, that Zoom is horrible.
No, Zoom stinks.
Okay.
But it's basically the worst thing ever. And I do find, though, that when I am in community, even if it is through Zoom, which I feel like if community was a percentage that you would typically get it at 100%, it is cut down to 50 or even 30% through Zoom.
Sure.
But still, like, even that much.
It's a stop loss.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's the Dutch boy plugging the holes in the dam. It's not...
Right.
This isn't the permanent answer, because it's not community. It's a virtual community.
Yep.
And in the same context, I'm not going to go, Caleb, I virtually care about you. I mean, like, that's not...
Yeah.
That's good.
But I've found
if you're married,
that...
go tell the spouse, I virtually love you, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Like, it's a temporary... a measure, but you're spot on. It's not the same as being in person.
Right, but even so, like, I think that is honestly one of the things that helps the most for me is going to my discipleship group and serving in students over Zoom as much as it stinks. But, it's honestly, like, still my favorite parts of the week. Even though I did skip a couple weeks because I just hated Zoom so much.
Can't do Zoom.
But yeah, I mean, it's a super good tool. And I hope that you guys are plugged in some way or another, even if it's just calling a family member.
I also kind of, on a similar type of vein, I hope and pray people have found a church kind of service that they can tune into on the internet, and then I hope it feels so different than being there in person that after the doors open, because churches are going to do this at different times, they're going to open up at different times, go to that church, be in a physical community, and find a way to hug each other at some point after phase 3 is over, I guess. I don't know. But be in physical community, because that's so needed. But until then, don't give up meeting together, even if it's through digital means, because that's a way to maintain that community during this time. And to be honest about the anxious aspects of it, knowing other people are going through the same thing does help the anxious thoughts of going, I'm not alone in this. Mm-hmm. And I think a ton of this is also tied to our identity and the person we think we are. That's been I've had a few of these conversations actually, that that kind of boiled down to identity, calling, and these kinds of things. And I think it's important to come at this from the right perspective of, if I'm trying to figure out job and calling, I need to differentiate that on my identity. Mm-hmm. In 2 Corinthians 5:17, it tells us, therefore, if anybody is in Christ, they are a new creation. The old is past, and behold, the new has come. And that is our identity. That is the statement of identity, is that I am in Christ, no matter my job, context, things I'm called to do, things I am doing, job I'm in, any of that, no matter what that is, my identity is above all those things, a child of God, made new in Him. And if I don't actually live that, then none of the other stuff will make sense.
Yeah, that's so good. Identity in Christ is everything, and truly understanding what God did for us is so important. And this is on the spur, but I was listening to the song earlier today by Red Rocks Church. It's called Nobody Like You, something like that. But it's talking about, but there's this whole line where I think it's kind of puts it into perspective on like what God did for us in a new kind of way. And I was just like listening to it, and it really was just clicking for me.
Right.
Because I find myself that it's important to this is not the right song. Let me type this in. Stall, Danny, stall.
So part of identity, I think that you're correct, is that it is based in this on the foundation of the thing Christ did. And actually there was a big gotcha question in seminary that they asked us, like, are we saved by works? And the answer is
no.
Yes, just not our own. We are saved by the works of Christ. Because if Christ didn't do anything, then we would not be saved. It is the works of Christ that are imputed to us as our own. But we as the Bible talks about being saved by works, it's talking about ours, because I'm not able to boast because Christ can do all the boasting, and I am in Christ because Christ even defeated death, which is such a wild thing to think about. Yeah. It's like, you death, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
So
okay, I have these pulled up.
The entire thing is based in the thing Christ did in order to pull me out of my old person into my new person.
Right. Yeah, and I think that honestly, what reminds me the most of who I am in Christ is just reminding myself of the gospel, which is super important. So here's the lyrics I was talking about. When nothing we could do would be enough, from heaven's highest place you reached for us. My sin and shame forever overcome. Oh, the grave was overwhelmed by perfect love. There's nobody like you, God. And that's really, just a super... How'd you pull it up that quick?
I'm better at Google than you.
And you have a keyboard. I'm like trying to type it in with my thing.
Sure.
Okay, whatever. I'll give it to you. But yeah, that's like... I don't know why that, clicked in my head again, and like I find it hard to understand sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know what God did for me.
Yeah.
But sometimes you hear it so much that it kind of loses the meaning sometimes.
Right.
But I find,
Right.
you know, when it's put in new words,
Mm-hmm.
it can help sometimes.
Right.
So like this is one of my favorite songs. I love them
Right.
so much.
I think,
yeah.
You know, to kind of tie them together a bit, that this, because there's this anxious unknown of the future going on, that people do to an extent start to question their identity. They're questioning, am I in the best job? Am I doing the thing God's called me to do? And they pour their identity into those things. And I want to caution against that. Your calling is very, very important, but your calling is not your identity. And even if I'm called to be on a boat, I don't know where that came from, but we're going to go with it. If I'm called to be on a boat and I never put a foot on a boat, I am still a child of God. Granted, running from my calling, clearly, but still my identity is based in the works of Christ, not in my own. And I think as people are questioning, because there are people that are going to have to find a new jobs or change to other jobs, or find new ways of doing things, or even exploring new callings. I think to start off, put our identity in Christ makes a ton of the other details easier to handle.
Right.
And then kind of other parts of that I've found, because, you know, I know it's easy to say, like, just know that you're a child of God. Sure. Okay. Now get to the practical. In trying to explore calling and everything, I found there are a couple of things that are important to the person. I think a ton of times people get bogged down in the details and miss the big thing God is actually telling them, or they get a calling out of God and then just kind of assume the details a bit. You know, they think I'm called to be I'm called to be an architect. Therefore, I need to be an architect in this place at this time, doing this, that, and that, and that. And I'm like, you might be called to be an architect. God did not clarify one of those things, and there's a part of God taking a person through the process that is important. That just because a God called a person to a thing doesn't mean it's gonna occur tomorrow. I mean,
Right.
Noah and the ark. God told him, like, hey, build an ark, make it really stinking big, because I'm gonna just put a lot of animals in there and I'm gonna flood everything. It took like 40 years. Moses spent the first third of his being in Egypt, another 40 in the desert, kind of hiding, and then when it gets to the meat and potatoes of Exodus, it was at that point he was 80 to 120.
Dang.
So God works things out in time, and it's important to ride that process a bit.
Yeah.
As far
That's
as
so
exploring
true.
calling.
Yeah, I think back to when I was first, you know, when I first felt called to do film, and
Right.
and it wasn't, I want to say, like 4 years until I probably even like really did anything serious with it. And I mean, obviously that's probably short in the grand scheme of things. You know, for some people, obviously, like you saying, no timeline is going to be similar, you know, to anyone else's. Like God works when He wants something to happen, it'll happen. And yeah, that's so cool.
Appreciate the vigor of people in their early mid-20s that have that go-get-'em attitude and they need to do everything immediate. I appreciate that. Don't kill that. Funnel it though, you know, like, I mean, like, channel it into because as I started out, I thought I was this kind of hot. I mean, I was all that, you know.
Continue with your other.
I was just like, I was all that in a bag of chips and everything else, and just through a period of 6 years of humbling, called seminary, I realized I was not that, but could become that. Not even that. I still don't think I'm that smart. I've had people say, like, Danny's smart. I'm like, don't speak that over me. Like, then I want to tell a fart joke right now. Like, don't pressure me to say smart things. But part of that is kind of a formative process of going through that. Yeah. And take time in that, because it's not a bad process. The other thing is to understand you cannot screw up beyond God's sovereignty. That's another really hard thing to understand, because it takes, everybody carries this pressure of, I have to be perfect, and you should be perfect as you know, Father in heaven is perfect. You should be. And now, please hear me as I say this. You're going to screw up, and it's going to happen. Period. Yeah. You're not God yet. You're not, or you're never going to be God. You're not God.
Yeah.
So kind of take the pressure off of needing to be 100% perfect straight out the gate, because then you've peaked and there's no place else to go. I mean, even starting off in film, you know, the first time that you felt called to, like, film, it was like 15 or 16?
Probably 15, I want to say.
Okay. Were you prepared to direct a feature film, 2 hour, let's call it a Peter Jackson epic?
HE double hockey 6. No.
Exactly. So there's part of that. Did you screw anything up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Personally, I thought all the early stuff, it was still good.
You want to hear my favorite story about me screwing up?
Yes.
It was my first time DPing, being a director of photography. Mm-hmm. And it was a shoot pretty big. Mm-hmm. And came back. And we shot everything in RAW, which is the highest form you can shoot footage. And it came back, you know, after, like, traveling and everything. This one. Yeah. And opened it up, and everything, all the footage was just black, just fully dark.
I thought it was glowing.
No. I mean, there was some stuff that was... No. Yeah, it was all black.
I thought it had the glow focus marks.
Glow focus marks.
Is that another occasion?
Oh, yeah, that's another occasion.
Okay, that's another one. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So not exposed. It was just a black screen.
It was completely black. And I shot myself in the foot. I shot it in RAW, which saved it, but simultaneously was bad at the same time, because I didn't know fully the settings. There was a setting in the camera that I didn't turn on. Right. There was information that was supposed to be sent that wasn't to the external recorder that I was shooting on. And the only thing that saved it is that it was RAW, because RAW is a super big file. I was able to raise everything back up. Right. It was grainy, but we bought the super, you know, nice degrainer, and it turned out fine-ish. But still, I thought I was just done. I was like, wow, first time I was trusted with something, and then I just screwed it up.
There are 3 sermons I've preached. I've kept everything I've ever preached, with the exception of 3 sermons. Those 3 sermons, there are no extant copies, because they were that bad. Yeah. The first time I ever taught, I thought it was really good. The third time I ever taught, there were no copies of it because it was so incredibly bad. I actually tore it up and threw it away in multiple trash cans, so you wouldn't even be able to put it together. That's how bad it is. I actually, the ending, I didn't even make it through the third point, because I heard everybody just, like, check out. It wasn't good, didn't connect. People, I mean, because even if a pastor preaches a bad kind of a sermon, there's always that one person comes up like, the Lord spoke to me today. Right, yeah. And instead someone said, like, I know you tried your best today. I'm like, oof. Like, okay. So that bad, harsh. Huh? Like, that was... like, you'll get them next time. I'm like, oh,
God.
thank you for believing in me. But no, I mean, if I came out the gate being the best preacher out there, and I am far from that, there isn't any place to grow, and there's no need to trust God at that point.
Right.
If I peak, there's and get the, if I'm perfect at it, then I'm not trusting God, because I'm trusting in my own ability, and because God's an infinite God, there's always a means to go higher, and always a means to improve, and to trust God through that, but to go through the process of training, of being very humble through that, and to understand I'm although I'm going to screw up, I can't screw up out of the sovereignty of God, because God will still be in control, even if I screw up.
Yeah. And
then the other thing, as far as you figuring out a new job or any of that, is don't scorn the road that you're on, because it's the path God chose to get you there. If God works out all things to the good of those that love him and are called by a God, then the path God put me on to get to the place I'm at, there are things I need to pull out of that in order to apply to the next thing.
Right.
Even the bad stuff isn't out of control of God. And there aren't things to be anxious about, but they're not things to go like, well, I didn't get anything out of that. Like, really? You couldn't find one takeaway or a skill to grow in or anything out of that? It's to be a good steward of the time we've been given to do the thing we've been called to do in the time and place, and then to grow in the field God has us.
Right. Yeah.
And if it's time to move, it's time to move. But don't, I've tried to not do this about, especially on the show, to not a dunk on my past, even if it's painful, to not put them down, because it's the path God chose to make me the person I am. Now, have I enjoyed all of it?
No.
Fat no. Yeah. Absolutely not.
Right.
But those are the people during the time I needed them, or they needed me, and God chose that time.
Yeah. That's good.
So as far as figuring out calling, is there anything that you found to be a good path to get to that? Do you know what I mean? Or any tips that people can
find your calling?
To find or take that next step in calling.
To find, I really have nothing, just because I was lucky enough to just have it told to me.
Right.
But to continue growing, I think just don't get cocky, which I find myself doing a lot. But take a step back, because there will be a point where you understand that you have no idea what you're doing, and that the only thing that's going to push you forward is God.
Right.
And it's one of the most comforting things. It sounds like it wouldn't be comforting, but it is. Like,
it's
knowing that
super comforting.
there's
Do
times
I know what I'm
where
doing? No, you don't. God does.
I just feel creatively at an end on how to improve myself as far as filmmaking, and I just trust God that I'm not done yet, and that he's the one that is going to push me further.
Absolutely.
And so just lean into that, which is hard, but that's really the only advice that I would have.
Yeah.
With my limited time in my calling.
Most people guess in faith. I'm not going to call it a straight guess, but they guess in faith. And there is that aspect of just taking that step in faith is terrifying and scary. But I'll be praying just not about the calling, but about the timing, and be positive it's God. I am the king of putting off the next step in pretending it's a timing issue and it's just fear. It's just so understand the difference between those. Like, is this God's timing? I was like, yeah, last week. Let's go. Let's go, baby. Let's do it. But to have the discernment of the Holy Spirit to speak through these things and say, like, hey, now is the time to go. So do it. Like to just kind of hold your breath and jump into the calling that God's given during the time God calls to jump. I mean, that's even happened a couple of times for a couple of different things we can't talk about yet, but are in the works, for conversations and other stuff that came about because I just felt like message this person in a very specific time. I was like, well, he's probably busy. You do it anyway, dummy. Let's go. And we'll see if just be faithful in the time and space that God's given and go from there.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah. Well, we are interested in knowing when you've ever struggled through identity or anxious thoughts or any of that and how everybody's doing. I think this is also still a good time to count our blessings,
right.
Because as anxious thoughts come up, if I'm putting my attention on God, then I need to pay attention to the things God's called us to and the blessings God is giving to us. It's easy to focus on the negatives, but if I'm focusing on God, then the negatives kind of fade away. And that brings us back to Project Joy 365. So please be taking those pictures. We have a few people doing it, and I'm going to start doing it again because I just stopped taking pictures. It's just been the inside of my apartment. Yeah. It's just been the same picture. So, but I'm going to start doing that again. And for more information on that, go to thegospeloutpost.com/ProjectJoy365 and check it out. There's just a good opportunity to show people the things God is doing inside of all of us through pictorial evidence on Instagram. Or if there are other questions that people are interested in us talking about, Caleb, where can they go to get them to us?
You can go to thegospeloutpost.com/nobodyspecial and you can find a forum there where you can ask us questions or say hello. We really genuinely love either one. You can also go on Instagram and Facebook at Nobody Special Podcast. I don't know if you already said that.
No, I didn't. I left it for you.
Which is right there for all you YouTube people. And you can also DM us there. So that's another great way. Or even YouTube. You can comment on the video and, we'll see it. So, and like you said last week, it's probably more reliable if you DM us or comment, if we're being honest here, because that form is pretty
The Canadian Pharmacy has finally stopped emailing me, so I'm going to put some of the forms back on the website.
They just wanted you to pick up your prescription, Danny.
No, they wanted... Oh, man. They were... They were militant. It was just like, there's Canadian Pharmacy 50% off. I'm like, yeah, no, homie. So that was...
That's funny.
We make one joke about answering a spam email on our podcast and then
they just hear us.
No joke, 200 spam emails on the website. So,
that's great.
Is it funny?
Yes.
Kinda. Yeah, like, I'm going to be honest, kinda. But I'll put that back on the website, and I'm actually getting better about checking it, which is also good. So.
Right.
But yeah, please give us a message. Go to iTunes, 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever. Leave a comment. I haven't checked in a while. I'll have to see if there's any fun comments on there, and maybe we can go through them.
On what?
On iTunes or any of the...
Can you comment on those?
Yeah, you can.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah.
So.
Even on YouTube, if you want to subscribe or, give us a thumbs up, comment. We really appreciate all the interaction you guys,
we have good fans
with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fans. Don't call them fans.
I know, I don't like that.
They're
we
not
have
fans.
Good listeners.
I don't think you want to be a fan of this. No.
We have good community.
We have a good community. That's a good... I like that.
I don't want to call them nobody specialers.
No. I don't want to call them anything except Jake Paulers.
the special force... The nobody special forces.
No.
Okay, we'll work on that. We'll work on that off camera.
Nah.
Because this is that part of the podcast where we keep rambling on until one of us says...
I think that's going to do it for us this week. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Danny.
And we are Nobody Special.